Starting off our list with an honorable mention at number 10, we have the Black Panther of the Marvel Zombieverse. Now, despite hailing from the universe literally called the Marvel Zombieverse, this incarnation of T'Challa is less scary himself, but more so just horrifying what winds up happening to him. After avoiding the initial outbreak of the zombie virus that managed to take out a large chunk of the world's superhuman population, T'Challa is betrayed by Hank Pym, aka Giant Man, and forced to be preserved as a food source for the former hero so that Hank can continue to focus on his research. Losing both an arm and a leg, T'Challa was only able to escape by teaming up with the zombified head of the Wasp, aka Janet Van Dyne. Coming in at number 9, we have the Black Panther of Earth 2301, aka the Marvel MANCAVERSE. Now, while usually the only frightening thing about manga is the amount of chapters I have to catch up on, the weirdest part of this section of the Marvel multiverse has got to be its unique take on Black Panther's powers. Rather than science or the heart-shaped herb of Wakanda, this version of T'Challa gets his powers directly from the Egyptian god Horus, and is capable of transforming into a literal Black Panther when he needs to for combat. Weirdly enough, Horus also gifts T'Challa the ability to grow a falcon's wings as well, so he might just have to argue with Sam Wilson about that if he doesn't want to get sued. Coming in at number 8, we have the Black Panther from the Ultimate Marvel Universe. In this slightly darker take on the Marvel Universe, gaining the title of Black Panther required T'Challa to literally defeat a Wakandan panther in a combat ritual, a task he was able to accomplish, but at the cost of having his throat slashed and severely injured. To save his son, T'Challa's father sent him overseas to be healed in the Weapon X program, the same torturous experiments that resulted in the Wolverine. Thus, this Black Panther has incredible healing abilities and adamantium claws, meaning that along with the vibranium of Wakanda, this version of the hero is wielding both of the most powerful metals in the Marvel Universe. Coming in at number 7, we've got to go with Cole Tiger, the son of T'Challa from the alternate future of the MC2 universe. Named T'Chaka II after his grandfather, Cole Tiger hasn't yet become the king of Wakanda, but that doesn't stop him from fighting for his people. In a twist, T'Chaka's increased strength and speed are only available to him in his panther form, in which he literally transforms into a human panther hybrid with incredibly deadly claws and fangs. Yeah, the Black Panther suit has always been at least a little bit intimidating, but getting chewed on by a super strong Panther Man seems like a bit more of a handful. Coming in at number 6, we've got Black Panther 2099. In an alternate future, the villainous Dr. Doom has invaded and completely taken over Wakanda, and the only hope lies in the hands of the Resistance and a new man who has taken up the mantle of the Black Panther, Kashamba. Using the powers of the heart-shaped herb, Kashamba at first seems to be a worthy successor to the mantle, with all of the powers that T'Challa had during his time as king. However, the dark twist at the end of this storyline reveals that even in victory, this version of Black Panther is nothing more than a pawn for Victor Von Doom, showing a defeated man sitting on the throne of Wakanda, a very horrifying sight indeed. Coming in at number 5, we've got to go with the Black Panther from Earth X. Another alternate version of the character that's a bit more cat-like than the normally human T'Challa, this version is actually permanently stuck as a panther-human hybrid, rather than just being an attack form he can change into and out of at will like the Cole Tiger could. After the Terrigen mists began to spread on Earth, many animals within Wakanda also began to grow more human in appearance, leaving the Black Panther as the leader of not only the Wakandan people, but an army of Animen that grew frustrated at their current situation. Definitely one of the weirder takes on a very iconic character. Coming in at number 4, we have the horrifying creature known as the Spider Virus Panther. During the event called Spider Island, a villain known fittingly enough as the Spider Queen used Peter Parker's DNA to create a virus that would initially just give people additional powers similar to Spider-Man, but would eventually mutate them into horrific half-arachnid, half-human beings. With multiple limbs, eyes, and a thirst for blood, this version of T'Challa with all of the powers powers of both the Black Panther and Spider-Man in a single terrifying form, this creature prowled the halls of the Museum of Natural History and definitely would be more frightening than anything else you'd find in that building. Coming in at number 3, we've got to go with the mashup hero of Ghost Panther. During the Infinity Warps event, which led to multiple Marvel heroes being combined together in a new universe with half as many inhabitants, Black Panther and Ghost Rider were combined together to become, you guessed it, the Ghost Panther. Adding Hellfire manipulation to Black Panther's power set would be reason enough to be scared of this version of the hero, but combined with a flaming skull head and eternally riding a fiery panther steed, and this is one Black Panther you don't want to mess with. Coming in at number 2, we have Azuri, the grandfather of the Black Panther. During the era of World War II, Wakanda was still isolated from the rest of the world and protected by Azuri, a Black Panther with the ability to raise and control the dead like a necromancer. Combined with his talent with the machete-style weapons that left him unafraid to decapitate his foes to send a message, and this version of Black Panther was an intimidating obstacle whenever Captain America briefly showed up on Wakanda's doorstep. And honestly, it's a good thing that Cap was able to keep his head. And coming in with our final slot, we've got to go with the venom-wielding Black Panther of an alternate reality, Ngozi. In a world where the original Black Panther falls in battle against the Rhino while protecting Nigeria, a track student Ngozi bonds with a symbiote in order to protect her friends. Impressing the Wakandan warriors nearby, Ngozi is taken back to their homeland and eventually earns the title of the new Black Panther, but with her own violent symbiote twist. With all the powers of both the heart-shaped herb and the venom symbiote, Ngozi is definitely a foe to fear.
In a 10 Reverse Flash. Now I know what you're thinking, but isn't Eobard known as the villain Reverse Flash? But he's a villain, he's not Barry. Okay, look, alright, I get it. In the main continuity, yes, but in the dark multiverse Flashpoint story, Eobard actually becomes the Flash, and he kind of became his own form of hero in a way, like a dark, twisted, messed up hero hellbent on eradicating the human race and just subjugating all superheroes to his will, but hey, that's still kind of a hero, right? Technically it counts. And I mean, like, he's still scary and another version of the Flash, so yes, it does. This is a universe where Barry Allen dies while trying to get his powers back with Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne. But he dies, and the Reverse Flash kind of takes his place. But once he tries to stop the war between Aquaman and Wonder Woman by threatening them and killing Arthur, you know that there's going to be some hell to pay. So he sets out on shaping the world into his own image. This involves preventing Batman from ever becoming Batman and instead creating his own superhero team full of versions of the characters we know and love, but all with Reverse Flash logos somewhere on their suits usually. And I have to say, preventing Batman from being created is probably the smartest thing that Eobard has ever done, or could have done in this situation, because either way, no matter who becomes Batman, Batman is always going to lead some form of resistance. So by eliminating Batman being created, you stopped just a resistance rising against you, so good on you. In at 9, Gorilla Grodd Flash. Grodd Friended Me is the 13th episode of the 6th season of The Flash, and is the 127th episode overall. In this episode, Grodd comes to Barry as a projection of Joe, and tells Barry that he is aware of his progressions made post-crisis. He asks Barry to assist him with getting to the Gorilla City that is now on Earth Prime, so he can at least be happy among his own kind, because currently he was locked up at Argus. Barry realizes that they have to try something new and overlook the past, and they need to work together to beat the Salivar that is in Grodd's mind. Barry and Grodd combine their brains briefly, giving Grodd super speed powers. Barry tells Team Flash what's going on, and Frost discovers that on the off chance that they don't end up separating their brains the exact moment that they escape, they're both going to die. While in the Mindscape though, Barry educates Grodd on how to utilize his speed against Salivar, and he succeeds with Barry's help. Barry awakens in reality, successfully disconnected from Grodd's mind. So yeah, a telepathic psychic gorilla with super speed after combining with the fastest man alive, yeah, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. Actually though, it was a pretty sick episode. And at 8, Speed Demon. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon #1, is, aside from what your ex-girlfriends might have called you, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. And yes, There are multiple. The demon component Etrigan was actually formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect the souls of the most pure and the most corrupt, which just sounds like a dream job to me, but whatever. Blaze Allen refused, so in an attempt to persuade him at his wedding, Night Spectre stole his wife's soul. He stole Iris's soul. Yep. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back or at least ensure her safety, but of course, he pulls back. That's not gonna happen, bro. Speed Demon speaks only in rhymes, but is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe hellfire. Wally West, an amalgam of Danny Ketch and obviously Wally West, was the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back. It's interesting because, like, I would give up my soul for super speed. Are you kidding me? And the ability to breathe fire? Speaking in rhymes is great. Yeah, that's right. You better not hate. And it's 7, Mercury Flash. Mercury Flash is a robotic version of the Flash made by Doc Tornado as a member of his Metal League. The robot uses a mercury-based physiology, whatever that means, that can make it somehow able to channel the Speed Force, and like the actual Speed Force, not even a fake one. I don't understand how this man not only learned about the Speed Force, but was also able to replicate or siphon it off using mercury, but whatever. It's comics, okay? You don't really need an explanation as long as it helps the plot. First being introduced in the Multiversity Guidebook #1 in March of 2015, this version of the Flash can do everything the normal Flash can do powers wise, but because, you know, he's a robot, can't really do human activities, but he also has the added advantage of being a robot, so he doesn't really fear death. Not only is it in his code to not fear death, but he can also just be repaired. This version of the Flash hails from Earth 44, and I kinda really want to be him. No responsibilities, only running super fast and drinking motor oil. That's the dream. And it's 6, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I had to include this one, okay? He's one of the most interesting speedsters on the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen, being more of a future Flash than actual Savitar. He's a combination of the two. His story is pretty messed up, in essence making himself to have a classic chicken and the egg scenario, as Cisco would put it, where he caused himself to be created. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future to kill Iris West before her and Barry get married. This causes Barry to create as many time remnants as possible in order to stop him, but Savitar kills them all except for one. The one that he spares ends up getting shunned by the rest of Team Flash for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he still technically is the real Barry. It's weird. So in an act of fury, the time remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed called Savitar. And then he comes back. He burns his face at some point, and then he tries to kill what would have been his wife, and he like remembers everything. He's in love with her, but he still tries to kill her. Yeah, I don't get it, but it's still pretty damn scary. Halfway through into #5, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. The Black Lantern Corps is a group of various dead superheroes and villains alike who were raised by Necron and each given a Black Lantern ring. This ring grants them power over death, and these rings are powered by the Anti-Monitor, as he is present within the Black Lantern power battery. Those raised by the Black Lantern ring are in essence resurrected to where they were before death, but their mind is warped to serve Necron's purpose. Those with the ring have various powers, including a healing factor, aura recognition, which allows them to see powerful emotions, energy spectrum assimilation, which lets them extract the hearts of individuals that they've slain and then use their last feelings to charge the central battery and their ring by 0.1%, and they, much like zombies, can infect others by biting them. A bite from a Black Lantern will slowly kill the one bitten, and then would turn them into Black Lanterns upon death. Basically zombies with superpowers in addition to being an evil speedster, so definitely not something that you should be trifling with. And at 4, Johnny Quick. Johnny Allen, also known as Johnny Quick, is a criminal speedster from Earth 3. Together with his girlfriend and partner in crime Atomica, he was a member of the crime syndicate. Johnny Allen was a high-profile criminal on the run with his equally criminal girlfriend when he was cornered on the roof of Central City's Star Labs. Allen was struck by a bolt of lightning which shattered the roof, and the duo fell into the lab space below. With Allen landing amid the chemicals, something in this incident granted him super speed and went on to become a powerful super criminal alongside his girlfriend, who also had been empowered. While his girlfriend took the name Atomica, he took on the name Johnny Quick. And he ran through the city, answering to no one, until the day the White House burned. Around the time of Darkseid's incursion into Prime Earth, the being that had destroyed Ultraman's Krypton came to Earth, and an alliance of super criminals formed to find a way to safety. Now my question is Johnny Quick the reason Johnny Quick became a speedster. There's the whole storyline where Barry Allen runs so fast that he disintegrates, but then he also time travels and becomes the bolt of lightning that gives him his powers. So technically, did that also happen to Johnny? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash. While going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was also struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. So August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got revenge on the one who he suspected to be his brother's killer. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power and the ability to become judge, jury, and vibrating executioner, August realized that after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal other speedsters' speed. Though for a time he could only do it by killing them, he practiced this skill enough to be able to do it non-lethally as well. With his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast as to create a duplicate of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't technically the same thing. Time Remnants just create evil versions of yourself, apparently. Penultimately, in at number 2, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, they just can't see this guy coming. Okay, well, they can, but you know what I mean. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2, number 138 from 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters, including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force, however was unsuccessful, taking Linda Park instead, Wally's girlfriend, which after past experiences, Wally, I feel like he probably did you a favor. But since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash returned to try to claim Wally again, freezing time for everyone without a connection to the Speed Force. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters including Max Mercury, Jay Garrick, Jesse Quick, and Wally was able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to have no meaning. In the CW, Black Flash was Hunter Zolomon after the season 2 finale, and was killed during season 3 when Savitar lured him out of the Speed Force and Killer Frost froze him, resulting in her first kill that actually turned out to be her ex as well. Dare I say, ice cold. But that didn't stop the Speed Force anyway, since later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline in the comics, becoming the new Black Flash, until Professor Zoom took over the title after his corpse was raised in the Darkest Night storyline. There's a lot of things going on. Finally, in at number 1, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait until you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center, so understandably he got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his let's call them methods, shall we? Which honestly seems realistic to me, aside from just quitting to fight crime, but that can't happen, otherwise they wouldn't have a story, right? And DC wouldn't make any money. This eventually leads him to Barry, who refuses to give Bruce his speed, so Batman uses the various Rogues Gallery weapons to fight Barry, knocking him out, and then tying him to the front of a cosmic treadmill-powered Batmobile, and drives them both into the Speed Force. I don't even know how that happened, logically, or why that would have worked in their world, but whatever. You do you, Bat-Marty, we gotta get you back to the future. When entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for killing, while Barry's mind was trapped in Bruce's body. He then gets a visit from the Batman who laughs, who just makes him even crazier and wants to help him conquer the universe, or the multiverse even. So yeah, he's number 1.
Coming in at number 10, we have the android clone known as Time Spinner. Very early on in Spider-Man's career, just when he was first getting to know the Avengers, the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror sought to use the up-and-coming hero as a way to destroy Earth's mightiest heroes once and for all. Creating a perfect robot replica of Spider-Man known as Time Spinner, this android was able to fool the Avengers into splitting up and was able to capture them one by one, seemingly capable of all the same feats as the real Spider-Man, but with a metallic body to match. Luckily for the Avengers, the real Spider-Man eventually caught wind of Kang's plan and showed up just in time to send the robot packing. But still, an android Peter Parker that can fool even the Avengers, that's some pretty messed up stuff.
In at 9, Lizard Spider-Man. The story of the Spider Lizard has its first origins going back in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 164, when Dr. Kirk Connors creates an innervator Enervator device to keep Spider-Man alive after Kingpin stole the web-slinger's life force using a Vita Drain machine. Subsequently, in Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1 number 32, Dr. Connors experiments further with the Enervator and accidentally creates the monster known as Iguana. Connors uses the Enervator on himself in order to become the Lizard and defeat Iguana, but that doesn't turn out exactly as planned, of course, because it's the friggin' Lizard, and Spider-Man has to come to the rescue. All of this comes back into relevance in Spider-Man Volume 1 number 39, where Dr. Connors persuades Spider-Man to swing by his laboratory for a checkup. It is clear that Spider-Man's mood is still being negatively affected by his earlier exposures to this machine. So in that same issue, Spider-Man faces the scourge of the Schizoid Man. The mental stresses of this battle are too much for his enervated system to handle, and a terrible transformation is triggered. So Spider-Man becomes Spider-Lizard. And I think we all know why that's a scary thing.
Coming in at number 8, we have none other than the Assassin Spider-Man of Earth 8351. Over the years, Spider-Man's had many different kinds of web shooters, from homemade mechanical ones to the biological ones of the Sam Raimi films, but this is probably the only version of Spider-Man where the web shooter is literally just a gun. Yes, believe it or not, there's a Spider-Man that just shoots people instead of web slinging. Having abandoned New York in his own universe to become an international assassin alongside Wolverine following a disastrous misadventure throughout Europe, this Spider-Man has entirely given up on the great responsibility part of his mantra, only aiding the other Spider-Men against multiversal threats whenever his own reality and way of life are in danger.
And it's 7, Doppelganger. Introduced in Infinity War number 1, Doppelganger was an evil, near-minded duplicate of Spider-Man that was created by Magus during the battle known as the Infinity War. The 6-armed creature was one of many doppelgangers created by Magus using Anthropomorpho's M bodies during this conflict. Although the doppelganger was killed during the Infinity War by Hobgoblin, he was mysteriously revived by the Demogoblin. When Magus was defeated by Adam Warlock at the conclusion of the Infinity War, all of the doppelgangers were destroyed except for the Spider Doppelganger, thanks to Demogoblin's magic forming a psychic link between him and Demogoblin, or I guess Demogoblin and Doppelganger. For a time he was a pet to Demogoblin, but the two went their separate ways after a very interesting fight. Doppelganger later joined up with Carnage, Shriek, Carrion, and Demogoblin during the infamous Maximum Carnage killing spree, and in the process Shriek became a sort of adopted mother to Doppelganger, which made him even more dangerous. So no thanks.
Coming in at number 6, we have The Other. Coming from a particularly weird era of Spider-Man history that seemed obsessed with turning Spider-Man's powers into having a magical and mystical origin, The Other, or Miss Arrow as her human disguise would come to be called, was a spider deity that apparently chose Peter Parker as being worthy of its powers, heavily implying itself to have controlled the radioactive spider that bit Peter in the first place. While initially bonding spiritually with Spider-Man himself and giving him a whole host of new powers, The Other eventually manifested as an entirely separate being and disguised itself as a teacher at Peter Parker's school. With much of this storyline since having been wiped from canon by the events of One More Day, it's still incredibly weird to look back and go, oh yeah, Peter Parker had a teacher that was technically the manifestation of his spider powers in creepy human form. Totally normal.
Halfway through into number 5, Dark Spider-Man. When Matt Gargan was the host of the Venom symbiote, Norman Osborn gave Venom a medication that reset the symbiote to the size it was when it originally possessed Spider-Man. However, the symbiote resumed its feral traits whenever Venom was attacking an enemy. Osborn formed his version of the Avengers, providing new identities to some of his former Thunderbolts. Norman introduced this guy, Matt Gargan, as the Amazing Spider-Man in his new Avengers. During the Dark Avengers' first mission against Morgan Le Fay, Morgan's magic affected Venom, causing him to lose and gain control of himself randomly. Venom bit Ares and fought Hawkeye, which in this case was Bullseye, and after Morgan was defeated, Hawkeye promised to kill Mac one day for trying to eat him while he was under Morgan's control. And that's expected. Basically, another evil Spider-Man, but I mean it wasn't exactly Peter Parker, but still, it counts. It's still terrifying. That's the trouble with the secret identity though, okay? It's easy to be impersonated. Arrow Season 3 for example.
Coming in at number 4, we have the emo symbiote influenced Peter Parker from Sam Raimi's film Spider-Man 3. We've all seen the memes of Tobey Maguire dancing and threatening to put a little dirt in our eye, but in my opinion, this is one of the more interesting depictions of Peter Parker before he decides to get rid of his symbiote suit and accidentally causes the creation of Venom. While many interpretations of this story always show Peter becoming more violent and prone to anger as the suit begins to affect his mental state, the fact that the suit seems to only make Peter more unlikable and cool in a dickish way feels like pretty interesting commentary on what a more badass or dark Spider-Man would even look like. Even if out of context or combined with the movie's other problems, it can come across as pretty laughable. But hey, those dance moves still count as pretty scary, right?
Can 100% confirm that was definitely scary. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Imperfect Spider-Man. In 2005, a fighting game called Marvel's Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects was released, and it didn't do all that well. But it did lead to an actually decent tie-in miniseries, written by Greg Pak and drawn by Renato Arlen. In the prequel series, we saw Spider-Man, Thing, Wolverine, and Elektra be captured and injected with a illicit substance developed by an alien scientist that corrupted them into bloodthirsty killers. Well, I mean, like, Wolverine was already halfway there, but it was the biggest change for Spider-Man. The substance turned Spider-Man and the other heroes violent and brutal, eagerly fighting in an arena in gladiatorial combat. I mean, it didn't last long before Spider-Man was able to fight off this drug and escape, leading to him fighting the rest of the Imperfects, but hey, he had been affected by this substance and he became bloodthirsty, okay? A bloodthirsty Spider-Man is pretty scary, but kind of cool.
Coming in at number 2, we have PATTON Parnell, with possibly the grossest use of Spider-Man's powers ever. In a twisted alternate universe where a young man named PATTON Parnell is bitten by a radioactive spider, instead of becoming a superhero, Patton becomes a complete monster. Instead of being inspired by the death of his Uncle Ben, this version of Spidey captures, webs up, and eats his cruel Uncle Ted, and even implants spider eggs within the neck of the girl he supposedly loves, Sarah Jane. All in all, PATTON Parnell is a tragic horror movie villain of a character, and one we definitely don't want visiting the main Marvel universe and planting eggs anytime soon.
And finally, in number 1, the Spider. Spider was a red-headed Peter Parker, a mass murderer who merged with a spider symbiote. As a sociopath who liked hurting people, Peter had a sense of humor akin to Deadpool. In the course of his criminal career, he was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences by a jury. So basically, he's Cletus Cassidy but Peter Parker. He was drafted by the Timebreakers into Weapon X, and he replaced Daredevil after it was presumed the Timebreakers had sent him back home. When Hyperion of Earth 4023 became a member and the de facto leader of Weapon X, Spider joined him in his case to conquer multiple realities. Because of course he did. Every bad version of Peter Parker wants to conquer multiple Earths. Peter was subsequently killed by Firestar with a mega blast from her powers in 2005, but he was buried in the prison cemetery of his home reality. But Peter Parker as a Cletus Cassidy serial killer, that's absolutely terrifying.
Number 10, Dirty Bomb Wolverine. Why does this sound like some sort of sexy nickname for Wolverine? It really is not. Instead, this alternate version of Wolverine is an empty clone that was created in the current Wolverine series and used to basically burn vampires loyal to Dracula from the inside out. This all went down in a battle in the effort of freeing Omega Red from Dracula's hold over him, while also getting back at Drac, who was attempting to get his hands on Wolverine so he could use his blood to allow his own vampire army to walk around during the day, making them obviously much more powerful. Omega Red's plan to stop Dracula was to give him what he wanted, which meant making a clone of Wolverine who was gene edited to have blood that was thick with photonic cells, similar to the ones found in plankton, which produce their own luminescence. Basically, the blood of the Dirty Bomb clone Wolverine then had the opposite effect on the vamps who consumed it, meaning they would be burnt from the inside out as opposed to being able to walk in the day. Having a gene edited clone of Wolverine is a frightening prospect, and a clone who is used simply simply as a decoy and bomb is pretty morally scary. And then there is the added factor of how it made the vampires feel to learn of it. And I'm sure that they were properly terrified before they were all killed. Minus Dracula, of course, who got away in the end, like he always does. Although the mutants won the battle in issue number 12 of the current Wolverine series, they did not win the war. Still continues with the Vampire Nation. Number 9. Darkclaw. If you find the Batman scary, and I mean, who doesn't? He is often drawn with the intention of looking intimidating and scary enough to strike fear into the hearts of goons and villains all across Gotham. Then take a seat, because Darkclaw is definitely going to spook you a bit here. Darkclaw comes to us from the Amalgam universe, where he was created as a cross between Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman, blending together two of the big two's most popular and frightening heroic characters. He's got the backstory and fortune of Batman, but still boasts of the adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor of Wolverine, meaning that Logan Wayne is not an alternate version that you would want to mess with. And all my ghouls out there, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Wolverine lists, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button and commenting down below. Also, if you click like and if you smash subscribe, you can call me Vampy. Number 8. Phoenix. One of the most terrifying versions of Wolverine in terms of what he could be capable of has to be the Wolverine from the alternate future, where Thor ends up as All-Father and Loki wipes out all of humanity, just to make his brother suffer, of course. In this dystopian future, Wolverine himself ends up being chosen to become the new host for the Phoenix Force after his own death. Phoenix Logan was obviously capable of many different insane feats due to him being imbued with, well, the Phoenix Force, even managing to save Loki from the Celestials. Pretty impressive. However, Phoenix Wolverine would prove to be not quite as scary when facing a future version of Doom, who obliterated him. But Logan, being imbued with the power of the Phoenix Force, meant that he could resurrect, and in order to ensure that Doom would be defeated this time around, he sacrificed himself to empower All-Father Thor's weapon Mjolnir in the continued battle. Also, that would be the one really powerful Mjolnir. It's like Mjolnir with the Phoenix Force. That's crazy. Number 7. Akahiro. Sure, Daken is a character all his own, but I also counted a clone that was used as a dirty bomb against vampires, so I feel like if I do that, it would be really insulting if we did not talk about Akahiro. Daken was an alternate version of Wolverine during Dark Reign, where Norman Osborn basically took over in the comics, where he forged the organization Hammer and his very own Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were made up of former and current villains repurposed and remarketed as Avengers replacements. Osborn actually tried to recruit some of the original Avengers after they'd been disbanded, but of course they pretty much all refused. They were like, we know you're Norman Osborn, so. Daken was recruited to be Dark Wolverine on the team, and while Akahiro might not be quite as villainous in the comics currently, at the time he was still pretty much one of the baddies. Daken is a terrifying alternate because he has less of a moral code than his dad, who already isn't known for his light touch when it comes to dealing with his opponents. Daken, like his father, is also a skilled fighter and assassin who was trained since he was a child to become a killer and a weapon for Romulus to use against Logan. Oh, and if you're not familiar with him, he also has pretty much all the powers of his dad. His claws are just a little bit different. Actually, Daken also has pheromone powers, so he's not really more powerful than his dad in terms of skill, but power set, just saying. Number 6. Wolverine Noir. Jim Logan is one of the noir versions of Wolverine that we see in the Marvel Noirverse. Another shows up in the X-Men Noir series, but with a different backstory and also kind of a different name. He's a bootlegger, but the one we're focusing on here is a detective. Honestly, a lot of the noir versions of heroes are detectives. But back then in the stories, everyone was a detective, so I'm fine with it. Either way, I personally think that narrative fits Wolverine's power set just a little bit better, being a skilled tracker himself. Jim in Wolverine Noir is part of Logan and Logan, a detective agency that boasts that they're the best there is at what we do. The whole look of the series is very creepy, very noir, and it also draws a lot on the backstory of Wolverine given to us in his origin series, where we learn of how he was mistreated as a boy, his relation to Dog, and his childhood love and friend Rose. In this version of the story, Logan's father is a very religious preacher who often forces young Jim to sit and listen to his sermons while he rehearses them. Number 5. Old Man Logan. Definitely one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine out there when it comes to the reality in which he resides. Old Man Logan hails from the alternate reality of Earth 807128. In this reality, it was Wolverine himself who was responsible for the death of the X-Men, as he was tricked by Mysterio into slaughtering all of them when the villains took over and ended up finally winning the day. Flash forward to the future, where Wolverine is old and he doesn't go by that codename anymore because, well, it brings back pretty painful memories, which he still is haunted by to this day. Instead, he's simply known as Logan. But even though he tries to stay away from heroics, retiring, and even settling down with a wife and kids, he can't seem to escape his vigilante ways. After his family are killed when he is late to pay forced protection money to the Hulk gang, Logan himself seeks revenge, inevitably and gruesomely freeing pretty much everyone from the villainous nature of deranged Pappy Banner and his inbred family. That Hulk gang. Oh boy. Number 4. Cancerverse Wolverine. We don't know that much about Cancerverse Wolverine, who hails from the Earth of 10011, but we do know, like many others who hail from this reality, Wolverine here is horrifying to behold, and he is part of the X-Men, spelt E-X-Men. In the Cancerverse, death was completely eradicated, which you might think would bring about a sort of paradise in the cosmos, but instead this change had, well, the opposite effect, mutating everything into one big horror show. Turns out death wasn't quite as bad as we all thought, and that life, left unchecked, is actually horrifying. Who would have guessed? Number 3. X-24. In the film Logan, X-24 was an even more deadly clone than X-23. This was a clone version of Wolverine genetically engineered to be as powerful as Wolverine in his prime, perhaps even more so, and who was much more easy to control and manipulate. Not as free-thinking and just more of a straight-up berserker. So basically like Wolverine without any of his moral code at all, or any inhibitions. This made X-24 the perfect weapon to be used against Wolverine himself and escapee Laura, aka X-23. It took a lot to take down X-24, and his perceived strength and ruthlessness in the film made him a terrifying nemesis to watch. I don't know about you, but I got so anxious every time he showed up on screen in that initial watch through of Logan. Even when I rewatch it now, I'm like, Logan, no, X-24's coming for you, run! Number 2. Lord of the Vampires. This alternate version of Wolverine comes to us from the What If series Volume 2, Issue 24. Here, the fate of the world was forever changed when, during the X-Men's battle with Dracula, Storm ultimately decided to remain with Dracula. This changed the course of history forever, as Wolverine and the other heroes were captured and transformed into vampires themselves. However, Wolverine's willpower proved much too strong for Dracula to tame or control, and so he was challenged and later defeated by Wolverine, who then became the new Lord of the Vampires. What's scarier than a Terminator-style clone version of Wolverine? How about a vampire version of Wolverine who rules over all of the other vampires and can turn anyone into his loyal thrall? Number 1. Zombieverse Wolverine. Actually, I feel a little bad that I put the zombies above the vampires in this list, but here we are. I don't know how, but I almost actually forgot to mention Zombieverse Wolverine on this list. I guess maybe it's just because I'm so fixated on vampires, which I guess makes sense. But it's really shocking considering how emotionally scarring and overall how terrifying I find the Zombieverse in Marvel to be. It's just a real horror show over there. Over on Earth Z, or Earth 2149, Wolverine isn't just any old zombie either, but becomes one of the zombie cosmic or zombie galacti, after he and a group of chosen few fight over and successfully devour Galactus's remains. For a long time, this granted zombie Wolverine the power cosmic, so not only was he now a terrifying member of the undead with Wolverine's killer instincts and fighting prowess, but then he also had the power cosmic on top of that. Wow.